Welcome back to the channel, guys. So first off, subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up. It really helps me out in the algorithms, guys, and it really helps my channel out. It helps all my videos out. All my social media links can be found in the comment section of this video. That's my Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and my Snapchat. If you want to get a hold of me, you can via my Instagram or my email at ronanholden2022@gmail.com, all lowercase. There is a PayPal link in the comment section and live chat of this video. So if you do want to donate to the channel, you can via that PayPal link. I don't have a super chat because YouTube takes about 50% of that money, and I would rather people donate to the channel via PayPal than the YouTube super chat. Every guest that I have on, if they have a YouTube channel or a social media, the link can also be found for their channel or any of their social medias in the comment section of this video. So go over and subscribe to their channel too, guys. All guests that I have on, all their links can be found in the comment section of this video. Guys, I appreciate every single one of my subscribers. Thank you very much for tuning in. Big up to everybody. I hope you enjoy all my videos. Enjoy this video. Have a good evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Peace and enjoy. Steve Clark, how are you doing, sir?
Not too bad, sir. How's you, Ronan?
I am very good. The crazy world of YouTube, we've both been caught up in it. But listen, we'll get your opinions about that maybe at the end or throughout the podcast. But there's a subject that I know little about, and it's the grooming gangs in Telford. Now, obviously, a lot of names have had to be changed in regards to people because we just don't want to be getting into any lawsuits or any court cases or anything. But there is the truth out there, and Steve has told me that he knows the truth about a lot of these subjects, especially the grooming gangs. He's looked into it, and he's kindly graced us to come on and explain what the actual truth is in this. There's a lot of polarizing figures in this here. As I say, we've changed names. I'm going to say the first name here, Tommy Robinson, but we'll be referring to him throughout this podcast as TR. But TR himself has been through the wars in regards to things that he has said. Is he a provocateur? Is he a racist? Does he have points? Nobody knows. But there definitely does seem to be a big issue surrounding this subject, surrounding the grooming gangs. They do exist, but we don't know to what extent do they exist. Has it been blown out of proportion? Steve, do you want to fill people in on who you are first off, and why you're able to speak on the subject?
Well, I'm Steve. I've opened recently a new channel on the back end in the midst of all the bullshit dramas going on YouTube to express my hometown, the goods and the bads of my hometown of Telford. That's why I've called it the official topic talk, because there'll be so many subjects that my channel is going to be covering. And it just so happens that Telford has got one of the worst grooming gang situations in the UK. And not many people really wanted to touch on this subject for the fact of the investigations that have been ongoing for the past 30 years. But I would like to basically cover over the period from 2007 onwards. I can speak. Are you
from Telford?
I'm originally born and bred in London, but I've spent the past 35, 36, 37 years in Telford.
So you know a great deal to do with the place. That's a long time to be spent in an area. You've been there more than you've been basically in London.
I mean, I basically grew up my younger life from birth to around about 21. I think I came to Telford when I was roughly about 22, 23, and I'm 50 now.
Well, look, can I just, as a novice in this sort of knowing about this sort of thing to do with the grooming gangs, obviously we see the TV, TR, as I say, we're Tommy Robinson for anybody that's just tuned in. I think we can speak about Tommy Robinson in the sense that we're not going to be talking about any cases, but we're going to call him TR. But TR, to me, anybody that I speak to, they say, this guy's a racist, this guy's this guy's bad. And they actually hear you say something there that this has been going on for the guts of what, 30 years. So, and do you want to scrape this back to maybe, as you said, 2007 and start from that point?
Yeah. Well, mate. Well, basically, around about 2007 was where there's 4 reports I've got on my channel, volume 1 to 4, which is the full report based upon the CSE findings in Telford, and that's dating back to like the past 30 years, but it's mainly covered from 2007 onwards. You can freely view it on my channel, and I'll get Ronan to put it in the comment section.
Yeah, guys, listen, I will leave all the links. I will leave
2007, I think, is where it was born.
But I will leave all the links for that in the comment section of this video, along with Steve's channel. So go over and subscribe to his channel and check out all the information that he's provided.
Yeah, so basically, I think for the Telford area, if I can say, it was born around about 2007. And there was 2 main players that were sat at the top of the pyramid, you could say, which is M.A. Mubarak Ali and his brother, and they were classed and counted as the ringleaders. You know, I'm unsure whether that could be true, but as the reports have stated, they were the ringleaders. Like they were the ones that born the grooming in Telford. And basically what happened was they were using vulnerable young girls. And the way that I see it is because they would be seen as not coming back home to the care homes at night. And they knew what they were well doing, you know, because if the police were to get involved, then they probably knew full well that young girls would be looked at. If I use the word scumbag, but it's a bit broad to say that, but the authorities were looking at them as scumbags because they were deciding to stay out at night. Their views as the authority back then, they looked at them young girls as being toe rags for staying out late at night. And the police even went as far to call them prostitutes. Now, the authorities from 2007 have brushed a heck of a lot under the carpet, as has been proven in all the reports. And by brushing it under the carpet, I mean they didn't want to investigate because they say they were scared to be called racists. Right, that's fact. Right, the police have used the excuse. They didn't want to be seen as causing a racial tension in Telford by going and arresting these 2 brothers. Now, the way the brothers knew what they were doing, because they knew these young girls were going to be looked at as toe rags because of staying out late at night. The authorities were looking at them as not the victims. The authorities was not once looked at any one of them 1,000 young girls as a victim. They looked at them. The police looked at them and labelled them as toe rags and prostitutes. Now, they're supposed to withhold the law. The law states you can't have sexual relations or anything with anyone under 16. Now, these girls are as young as 11 to 13. Some were a little bit older, 14. Now, why would the authorities say they're prostitutes at the age of 11 to 13, knowing full well the law says you can't have a sexual relationship until you're 16? They should have withheld and upheld that law, and never once they should have looked at these children as a prostitute or a scumbag, because they were groomed from head to toe. Now, the reason I started 2007 is because that was the first time that MA, Mubarak Ali, was charged, and he received a prison sentence in 2017 for it was another offence in relation to grooming, but he came out in 2011, and in between 2008 and 2011, that was rife. That was like the borning of the full grooming situation in Telford. But as soon as he came out, less than 3 months, and he was back inside for 18 years. So he never changed. He was always sat at the top of the pyramid, according to the reports. But the saddest thing is, everybody thought, right, that these girls were lying. Now, if you're an 11 to 13-year-old child and you're getting showered with gifts and affection coming up in the ranks of the care homes, you know, they're going to look at that, aren't they? And they're going to think, hold on a minute, he's showing me attention. But all the way down the line, they specifically targeted these girls in the care homes for the simple fact they knew the authorities were going to look at them as the point of view of scumbags. But in 2007, there was rumours that the police force, chief inspectors, were receiving backhanders of these Pakistani grooming gangs to keep it silent. And in the full report that's come out recently, why would a chief inspector leave a file involving, let's say there was 1,000 girls all involved over them years? I'll look at the main 30 because that's what the reports have stated. Why would a chief inspector leave a file that thick, right, in the bottom of a vault? No one can tell me they're going to be feared for being called racist, because he gets paid to protect the public. That was his job.
Well, there's a few things. Sorry to just, I want to let you speak, Steve, because there's, as I say, I've got no knowledge in this subject, but there's a few things that sort of stands out in my head. For one, I'm not going to sort of try to understand what the main goal is of the grooming. Obviously, the grooming is for a reason, but there's a few things that stands out to me, and what you said is that they were targeting very vulnerable girls, and these girls as young as 11 years of age, maybe younger, were seen as prostitutes. Now, an authority figure, especially somebody in the police or the court systems, saying that, then what they're actually doing is they're recognizing their own failures, because if they're seeing that 11-year-old girl as a prostitute, then that's essentially, well, it's illegal anyway, but essentially that's child prostitution, and in turn they're actually frowning upon children being abused. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So either way you look, so what's worse, the fear of racism or protecting vulnerable little girls from child prostitution? For me, then, their reputation meant more to them than actually saving young girls.
Exactly. I mean, now, there may be another reason as to why the police force and the authorities didn't want to lift a finger. I don't think it only surrounded the racist thing, because, come on, they're chief inspectors with like 5 pits on their shoulder, looking after maybe 1,000 officers and maybe like 200 detectives. They're surely not going to look at it and think, oh, this is going to start a race war now, because 1,000 young girls, because they never made the right choice and decision back then to maybe let it start a race war to protect 1,000 young girls. If I was that chief inspector, I'll take that gamble, I'll take that chance, because I know charges are going to come at the end of it. So they would not ever have been able to be called racist. That makes me understand. That leads to another reason why the police officers decided to turn a blind eye, and it's out there in the public domain. TR. I'm not saying I'd back him to the hilt, because he has got a bit of a shady past to do with being a racist. I mean, but the work that he's solely done involving grooming gangs, with everything he's touched on, he's 98% correct. Now, the 2% would be the the way he conducted and carried himself years ago as being far right. Right, so that's the 2%. 98%, he was correct. I believe, with what he said in his 2 documentaries.
Can I clear something up?
Now, the other point, Ronan, I want to put straight.
Well, just before you start, I need to clear something up. So you mentioned the far right there. I have to categorically say this now, right? That I would consider myself liberal. I would consider myself left wing, but under no circumstances do I support grooming gangs. So the fact that I think this is where people are going wrong here. Normal liberal people like myself, and some people would consider themselves conservative, and they're not. People can't tell the difference between being right wing and left wing, but most people are left wing and they don't even know it. It's just society today has sort of corrupted our brains into thinking that right wing sort of backs the people, and it doesn't actually. Left wing backs the people. But I can say 100% now that I disagree with any type of grooming gang. I disagree with any type of indoctrination. I disagree with any type of child prostitution. And I think any man or any person that does that should be hung, drawn, and quartered. And they are scum of society, and they should be outcast from human civilization, never to be seen again, because that's the lowest of the low. And I know a lot of people will be hearing this now and think, well, that's actually a right-wing view. Well, it's not. That's called a human view. And so for Tommy Robinson to hold that opinion, TR, and for me to hold that opinion, it doesn't matter if you're left or right wing. It's the difference between right and wrong. And you know, a lot of people out there have been split and divided by the man in the box, the TV. And I think this is why this subject is so polarizing. When watching a few of these clips on TV and regarding Tommy Robinson and TR, sorry, I keep saying his name.
I'm not saying that TR is 100% right with his information. You know,
yeah, but they definitely 100%.
Because I can only go by facts and that report.
But TR, you have to understand, he comes out, as you say, the thing, conducting yourself, coming out with a Quran on live TV, coming out. Listen, I could say now, I seen an interview with Tommy Robinson and a black guy. And at the end of the interview, the black guy says, I can categorically say Tommy Robinson isn't racist. But it's not about that. It's public perception. And if, as you say, if the BBC, Channel 4, Channel 5, if they want to sort of run with that narrative, it's very hard to get away with that. And then especially if you're going to get banned off YouTube, Twitter, and all the rest. I think the only other platform he's on is Getter. So there is a mass censorship on this topic now. Is that mass censorship because Tommy Robinson is wrong, or is this a mass censorship because he's poking at elites?
See again, some of the information that TR's come out with has been spot on. Now, there's a difference between using fact and using assumptions. Now, to me, all the rightful people have been charged and they're in jail now. There's still more out there, you know, but slowly, you know, they are going to get collared. Now, the way that TR went about it, I disagree with the way he went about it, to be fair with you, because he could have, in my book, named some innocent people within that documentary, because there was no solid evidence on certain people within that documentary. Now, 2007 again, there was murders over, there were 3 young girls murdered because they were going to speak out about these grooming gangs. Now, this is the danger that possesses probably majority of people who are going to speak out about it. You know, this is maybe why not many people wanted to cover it, you know, for fear. The evidence surrounding 2007 to 2012, but yet some people have not been charged now. This is fact, and it's all in the reports for my words to be backed up. From the 8, there was two young girls who fell pregnant numerous times, right, between 2007 and 2012. Yet the police still wanted to turn the blind eye to that. Now, if you've got a DNA fetus of a baby that was terminated, DNA don't lie. DNA is the strongest evidence to bring a solid conviction. Now, I know to 2 of the young victims, twice over, right, there was DNA evidence to that extent. But yet all the police could do was NFA it.
What age were these young victims?
NFA against like that sort of evidence.
What age were these young victims?
One of them was being groomed from 11 and she fell pregnant at 13. And the second was 12 when she fell into their grip. And she fell pregnant twice between the age of 12 and the age of 14.
And DNA evidence was found from the fetus to be linked to an older man that was involved in these grooming gangs.
Yeah, but yet he had never been pulled in, questioned, let alone being charged.
Why?
Now, this is the side now where I was saying to you why they pick on vulnerable females. As the report states, I'm sure this is in one of the reports on volumes 1 to 4. The young girl was in communication with, let's just say, 8 adults. To the extent of the communication level, it wasn't stated. But she was talking to, let's say, 7 adults. Now, these Muslim gangs use that to say that she was talking to adults, and they were demanding gifts of adults and wanting these adults to buy them gifts. So because they were talking to adults and only the police know to the extent of the conversations and how they went, in the two instances that was similar, the police decided to NFA against DNA evidence. Now, was they paid money? Was money exchanged hands as tiaras?
No, but the thing about it is, just to backtrack there a little bit, because I need to understand that, because there's a lot of people just like me who'll not have a clue that how can you no further action? That's what that term means, NFA. And
how can you NFA DNA evidence?
How can you look at the DNA, have stone cold evidence that this young girl was graped? And I'm using the word graped. If you want to know what that means, guys, just take off the G. I have to say it just for the algorithms on YouTube. But this young girl was graped, and there was stone cold evidence, and it was NFA'd even with 100. And guys, just to let you know, the conviction rates on all grapes around the United Kingdom and Ireland is very, very low because they can't get DNA evidence. So the fact that there was DNA evidence in this case, and these girls were sitting at the age of 13 and 12, the fact that that didn't proceed into courts and then to a conviction sort of indicates corruption.
At its highest level, Ronan, corruption back then was at its highest level. Now, that's how I can state to you today that the police knew exactly what was going on. You know, when they received DNA evidence, you can't deny DNA. You know, it's 1 in 10 million. We're all individual on DNA, and it's been pointed to one individual out of the whole of the UK to be the father of that fetus. Now, that is where the police corruption is so high, because why would you not want to bring a charge on a person, right, that has raped a young girl to the extent that they become pregnant? Why would you not? You know, I'd love to ask that to the Chief Inspector. You know,
well, what I will say is, if the Chief Inspector is watching this here at any point, you do have the right to reply. Anybody from anybody involved in these cases, if they want the right to the reply and they want to come on and educate us, maybe they know something that we do.
And the other evidence, right, which is proven again that other authorities are involved in this corruption. It got spread. Now, this is fact, right? In one classroom, right, in one school, you know, you've got when you're on that year, like say year 12, say, you normally have about 4 classrooms, don't you, within that year 12? In one classroom, right, there was 8 victims out of one class. 8 victims out of one class. That's the extent that these grooming gangs went to.
8 victims in one classroom.
One classroom of a school.
That's basically a small classroom of kids that they had groomed. In some rural areas, you're only going to get 8 kids in the class, or you know, like
say you get 12. Say you get 12 in the class, right? That's close to 89% of that classroom was groomed. This is how deep that this grooming has gone on in Telford.
And was this solely just in Telford, or what was the range?
This is just purely, I'm speaking about Telford now. Rotherham, you got Huddersfield, and there's another two other towns that have gone through this same sort of thing. Now, what makes Telford stand out from them all is the extent, right, that these groomers go to keep these children quiet. Now, I'm going to cover now 3 murders, right? One was LL, Lucy Lowe. Right, now she fell pregnant age 14, and age 16 she was murdered, right, because she was going to come out and tell the world about these grooming gangs. Now her daughter is still alive to this. Her daughter survived. At the time she was 16, she was pregnant, but she had already, at the age of 14, carried and born a child. You know, and that child now is in the late 20s. And what happened was, this is all in the reports. LL was going to come out and be the whistleblower. Now, the person who was the father of her child when she was 14 obviously didn't want the truth coming out. And one night, about between 12 and 1 in the morning, he set fire to the house, petrol bombed the house, killing LL, killing her, her mum, and her sister. Now, her daughter, which was 2 at the time, the perpetrator, who was grooming her for years from the age of 13, saved the baby and left the baby by a tree. And that's the only way that the daughter survived. Now, that was one case of the extent that these groomers go to silence people. Right? The second, this is all stated in the reports. Now, the second young victim, she was groomed from the age of 13, I believe, and aged 17, again to be silenced, but they made this one out to try and be an accident, you know, but it came out that it's murder. Now, incidentally, I'll go back to that previous one about the groomer who firebombed the house. He only served time for murder, right? He's never been convicted, right, of a sexual offence, even though he fathered that child when she was 14. This is another extent of the police corruption. Why hasn't he had the sexual element of the charges put to him? I'll tell you why. The police turned around and said that they were worried they wouldn't get a conviction. Again, DNA, right, was involved, of the fetus of the daughter that she born when she was 14. Now, the police said they would rather chase a murder charge than to chase a murder charge and a great charge as well.
Just now, right. No, just on that topic, Steve, right? So keep that thought for 2 minutes. Sorry to butt in, but I did hear something that, and when it comes to the police and it comes to grape and it comes to murder, they will literally discard the grape to go straight after the murder charge. But with this situation, what makes this different for maybe there's any cops that are watching this from all around the world and say, well, actually, maybe that's actually standard procedure to maybe just get a conviction on a more serious charge. But with this case is that they had DNA evidence in most of these cases because there was fetuses, and they still decided not to go for that. And they actually NFA'd that. So for me, that's a standout point that people really need to pinpoint, that they had 100, the most crucial evidence in any grape case, DNA. They had this, and that was disposed of, and that was thrown out, and that was NFA'd. And for me, that indicates clear corruption. And the lengths that they're going to, these guys. As I say, listen, it doesn't matter Muslim, Catholic, Protestant, doesn't make a difference. Catholicism, Buddhism, it doesn't matter what. This isn't about religion. This is about right, and this is about wrong. And what these guys were doing, where they were targeting young girls, getting them pregnant, and what it seems like they had moles inside the police system, just sort of at a high level to eradicate any investigations. So to me, it is an indication of massive corruption.
See, basically, what I'm trying to air from all of this is not only show people the extent of the grooming, but to also show you the negligence and failures within the authorities, the police, teachers, social workers, right? And all they can say, Ronan, right, and it's all in the report, right? The only words that have ever come out of their lips, right, are the words, "Oh, we're sorry." You know, that don't cut it for me, because you can call it corruption, you can call it failure. Either way, they failed 1,000 young girls. The authorities have. I'm not going to just put the blame on the groomers, right? Because I'm here to air these groomers, and whereas a lot of people, don't want to talk about this subject because of fear. But at the same time, you've got to blame both sides. Now, there's enough words that I've said during this time with you, Ronan, that the police knew exactly what was going on, right? And they failed the young girls. They could have saved 1,000 lives. They could have saved 1,000 young. They knew what was going on. The police knew 1,000,000% what was going on. And what upsets me more than the groomers is the failings from these authorities. And it's only now, 30 years later, right, that they're saying that they want to rectify the problem. It's 30 years too late. Now, the second murder I'm going to get to now.
The third, sorry, is it not? I think you mentioned two.
No, I've got the first one. I was just getting to the second one.
Yeah.
See, by the second one, they tried to put this down to an accident, but in the reports, it says differently, because the reason why they said it was an accident is because I think at the time she was 17. Bearing in mind she was groomed from the age of 13. And the driver of the vehicle was her abuser. And she was on the bonnet of a car. And I think they were prattling about. And I believe that she was obviously run over. Again, by the perpetrator of the car. They tried to put it down to an accident, but some reports have claimed it's quite the opposite. Now, that was through silencing the young lady. Again, she was threatening to come out and be the whistleblower. And that was the second life taken, because they were going to come out and expose these perpetrators and these grooming gangs. Now, the third one, I say murder, but it was like suicide, because of the extent of the grooming she went through from the age of 11. She decided that she couldn't cope no more with the fact of the authorities failing her. And she went to the police numerous times, and they categorised her as being a child prostitute. And because of them failings, she decided to take her own life. But I put that still down to murder, because there was perpetrators, you know, that was led right up until her leaving the earth, because of the extent of what was going on. And again, she was wanting to let the world know.
Can I just ask you a question, Steve? Do you know, this obviously what I'm about to say here, this is just going to be an opinion. Everything Steve has been talking about today has been put down on paper, but this is just an opinion, right? And I'm asking your opinion, so this is just hypotheticals here, right? Do you think this could be a possibility of maybe like a Jeffrey Epstein type case, where he compromised these grooming gangs maybe compromised high up people in the police force, the BBC, and all these places, maybe with certain prostitutes that they believe were overage, but were underage, and then they were made aware that these were underage, and they had to do with these people?
Because of the fact the police knew the ages of these young girls. They're all late. They're all late between 11 and 15. So there was no doubt in anyone authority mind.
Yes.
They were claiming, they weren't claiming to be 16 or 17, but actually.
But what I mean is, do you think that this grooming gang and these grooming gangs sort of facilitated sort of parties or whatnot with high up officials in the BBC, the police force, compromised them and then blackmailed them not to pursue any of these cases?
What I believe, I believe that they were bought.
Yeah,
I believe the police were bought. I believe
millions.
I believe it's nothing to do with the police being scared of being called racists. I believe that the pressure that was put upon certain high up ranking police officers, that somebody might have had dirt on them, and like you say the word blackmail comes into it, you know, that could have been full well used, because these grooming gang guys that have gone to jail, there was people above them, you know, that was making it possible. They still haven't been caught. And these are the ones that have got the money. These are the ones like your lawyers. These are the ones like business people, which have financed the quietness of the police turning their back.
That's what I'm trying to say, though. There definitely seems to be elitist activity along with the ground level grooming gang here. Now, just a question for you, for the people wanting to actually know, what were these girls groomed for, and could you explain that?
I believe it was for their own sexual gratification and money.
So they were sold.
They were kind of like M.A. Mubarak Ali and his brother were receiving money for these men to be sleeping with the girls. So money was involved, and obviously sexual gratification, most definitely, because, you know, these adults could have gone and got an adult prostitute. You know, so
it was a sex ring then.
To be clear on the fact, I say, and the report also, with people that will read the report, it's kind of like, imagine 3 circles, but they're all linked. And then you've got one big circle, and you've got 3 smaller circles. So you've got a group there, group there, group there, but they're all part of the big circumference. And then sat at the top of the pile, you know, you've probably got 3, maybe 4 individuals sat at the top of the pile, are the ones that are making it possible for the authorities to stay silent. And anybody that was trying to come out and expose them, they were dealing with them. Now, I'll touch on to why I've gone into it in such an extent myself, and I've been involved in this circle, and I can freely speak about it now because you know, 4 out of 5 of them are in jail. I was approached 2017 to 2018, I was approached by five groomers, and 4 out of 5 are all serving time now, and one of them got out on an appeal. Now, they approached me. Why? Why did they approach me? Well, they found out that my sister was given evidence in court to help a victim, and she was with the victim on certain numerous occasions where when the grooming was kind of happening. So my sister was asked to go to court to give evidence on behalf of the victim. And on my Facebook, you can list like family members, can't you? You know, I've locked it all down now because of this factor. They've looked down my Facebook, and they've looked down my sister's Facebook and seen where you can add family members. I was added as her brother. Now they've linked me to my sister that way via Facebook. And one day, out of the blue, my boss received a message, and they wanted a meet with me, the five of them, and you know, I didn't have a clue what it was about until they turned up. So as the meeting started, I felt right from the start, you know, they were trying to intimidate me to the extent to get my sister not to go to court. Did I feel a bit intimidated? Yeah, I did, but at the time, I knew I had to stand strong. I had to let these guys know, you know, that it ain't happening no more. You know, they ain't going to go around intimidating people and murdering people, you know, to keep quiet. And I found the strength within to stand up to all 5 of them during this meeting, where basically they were trying to lean on me, for me to lean on my sister to not turn up at court to give the evidence. And to keep this all legal, you know, I basically said to each and every one of the 5 of them, there's one person in this world that's going to make that choice of whether you're guilty or whether you're innocent, right? I told a lot of them, if the judge tells you you're guilty, you're guilty. If the judge says you're innocent, you're innocent. That's the law of the land. You know, as for the pressure they were putting on me, I mean, you know, I did have a bit of fear for myself. But because I went nose to nose with each and every one of them, I told them what was going to happen to them and their family if they were to go near me, my sister, my family, or the victim in this case. You know, I kind of told them what I would do and the extent that I would go to, you know, to protect these people that A, I love, B, part of my family, and C, a victim.
And they try to use intimidation tactics on you to get you to drop or to get you to lean on your sister so she would not stand as a witness in court for one of the victims.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. That's what they wanted me to do, and that was why they went to the extent to find. Initially, they were going to approach my sister. Initially, they were just going to turn up at my sister's door until they realised who I was, and they realised who my boss was at the time, and they decided to approach me and not to go to my sister's door because they knew there'd be repercussions in the big way had they had gone direct to my sister's door.
And did they pursue your sister after this, or did your words actually mean something and they just dropped it?
They took my words, and they never went near the victim. They never went near my sister. There was actually 2 meetings, I mean, but that's how both of the meetings went. Because they realised that they could see what was strong about my back, you know, and what was stood behind me at that moment. I think that's the reason why they bowed and backed down and didn't go near the victim or direct to my sister's house. Because I think they knew if they had done that, you know, there would have been serious repercussions. And that was only because of the people in the group that I surrounded myself with back then in like 2017, 2018. But if I hadn't have been strong, like quite a few other people in the Telford area, they've had to move out of town for fear of repercussions towards their life. They have at the time they weren't as strong as what I was as an individual, as a person. And they've had to physically move out of Telford.
So what I'm going to say is, so in your opinion, and sort of proof in the pudding, if you have a strong backbone and stand your ground and sort of, as you're putting it, say no to the bullies because they're trying to intimidate you, that actually will serve you well, and in turn you're going to get justice. Do you think that if the police and the people that are in these communities, regardless of religion, Islamic, Christian, whatever, Buddhists, do you think if they done that and they sort of adopted the same sort of type of strategy as you, then the police could get better and these bullies and these grooming gangs would cease to exist?
I think the proof's been in the pudding since numerous offenders that have been put behind bars. It's a case, you know, like when you push the domino, you're going to have a domino's effect down the line. And since these guys have been serving serious time inside, don't get me wrong, Ronan, I mean, don't think for one moment that I weren't worried about repercussions of them 2 meetings, because it was plain and clear to them exactly what I could have produced towards them and their family, and the level of threat that I carried was the level of threat that they were intimidating me with, if not more. You know, I'm one of the lucky ones. Other people have obviously stood up to them, and they've had major repercussions for standing up to them. And quite a few of them have had to move out of Telford, you know, for the fear of them repercussions towards them and their family. So I'm not saying if you just stand up to them as an individual that it will go away. You know, they recognised the force that was stood behind me, basically. And I think that's why they didn't want to test me at that moment, because they knew what could happen.
And just Steve, just I want your answer on this here. So obviously, living in the area for such a long time, you're gonna know lots of people in the Islamic community. What's the general opinion on these people, this grooming gang from the Islamic community itself?
Well, let's just say, I mean, the Pakistani community, which is the major part of these grooming people, and where they've evolved from, the Pakistani community. I can safely say, after speaking to like one or two people within their community, that they will not tolerate it. They don't want these people back in their community. As far as they're concerned, they're bringing their community down. And if they never took that point of view, it's the old saying, like they say, you can't tarnish everybody with the same brush. But the Pakistani community have actually got together and recognised that these individuals don't belong in their community. You know, they brought shame upon their community, which is a good factor, because if they're thinking that they're just going to come out of jail and everything's going to be hanky-dory, they'll fit back into that community, you know, I can safely say that will never be the case. Their community are disgusted.
Well, technically, what they are, they're predatory pedophiles, and if they're accepted back into that community, then that's not going to do the reputation of that community any good. And I know firsthand that there's a lot of very, very, very decent people in the Islamic community. 99.9% of them are decent people. That's just like saying that everybody from Ireland or Northern Ireland is in the UDA, UVF, Provies, IRA. You know, we're not. 99.9% of us aren't, and we're just normal people caught up in the middle of it. And it's the same with the Islamic community. A lot of the majority of these people are decent, good people, hardworking people. It's the minority that are in this because they're sexual predators, greed, and everything in between. So I think people need to understand that.
So their families are disgusted by how their sons have turned out. And like I say, I have spoke to, and I have always been friends within this big circle of the Indian and Pakistani community in Telford. You know, I know their family members, you could say, you know, like cousins, uncles, and that's where I say they brought shame upon their own families. Now, some of you might think that their families haven't gone through it. I mean, you know, their families have gone through it, because their kind of religion and culture isn't quite the same as ours. They're more close knit, you know, than us white people are. And for one individual to dishonour that family, you know, I can safely say, out of every single one of these grooming gang members that are in jail at the moment, when they come out, they're not going to have the same life that they went in before. You know, the whole community have come together to turn against them. You know, which...
Well, there's a common theme, Steve, and I have to say this, and look, it's the elephant in the room, and it's just the truth, and I'm sorry, I have to say it. This isn't an extreme right-wing view. As I say, I'm left-wing myself, but I know people. I'm getting people on from Afghanistan. I'm getting people on that come from that have grew up during the 20-year period when the Americans had control of the Middle East and them areas. And what I'm hearing is, from the humanitarians that I'm speaking to and the people on the ground is that the extreme sort of radical Islam, sort of radicals from Islam. By the way, I'm not directing this any hate towards Islam. I know you can get radical Christians, you can get radical anything, but solely just talking about the radicals coming out of Islam here. They sort of have these views that the grooming gangs, being a groomer in the Taliban is just mandatory. That's what they do to young girls. So I would near enough say that you know, as I say, the 99.9% of the majority of these decent, hardworking Muslims, Pakistanis, these people wouldn't be able to resonate with these guys, but these guys are resonating with the majority of the Taliban in the Middle East.
A few of them actually. I'm glad you touched onto that side, because a couple of them actually do believe that even. And the majority of these groomers that are in jail now for these hideous, dirty crimes, they're married. They've got a wife, they've got children. But they believe, and again going on to that radical side of things, they believe that they were entitled to have a slave.
Well,
now this is the point that some people get a bit confused on. Right, because this is not their religion, right, which is being portrayed to them. This is the individual's thought, right, that they think they can have their wife, their children at home and have a slave. That's never taught in the Pakistani community as where they're going to the mosques, right? This is never practiced in a mosque. So again, this is again where they've chose to break away from that side of their religion and culture.
They've aligned themselves with the extremist views coming out of the Middle East in regards to Islam. So there's the extreme side of Islam. I think it's the right way of saying it, Shahir Allah.
Yeah. But I must state this is nothing that
yes.
would be related to their mosque at all. You know.
Yes. And I have to say this, guys, what I'm hearing coming out of Afghanistan is that you're not really hearing in the news, is that the Taliban's took over and it's worse than previously thought. So they've came in. Girls are not allowed to be educated with boys. I don't think they're allowed education, too much education as it is with the Taliban members. There's mass grooming, there's mass rape, there's mass murder. And essentially everybody that's helped the West in there, the people in the Middle East, they are now being slaughtered and slayed, and the grooms or the girls are all being raped and brutalized and used as slaves. And to me, there is a common theme with them radicals and the way these guys are acting on the streets of Telford and England. That's just a fact, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's more, it's the failings. You know, after hearing and reading through the report, I mean, I'm still probably got about another 500 pages to go through. You know, it's hard to absorb and to take in it all because there's so much within then 4 big reports. That's been rounded up into one major report. To absorb everything, I mean, it will take you a good couple of weeks to understand and to absorb exactly the extent. I mean, what we've touched on is basically the index of the report, you know, and my dealings with what I've known since 2007, which again has been backed up in that report. It's the failing.
Come back on for a part 2, Steve. You can come back on for a part 2, as I say.
I think we're going to need, like, really to cover this whole scenario and grooming gang situation. You know, it may take 2 more parts. You know, because each time we can go more in depth, because both of us would have read a bit more of the report to absorb and to understand to that level.
Well,
but, I mean, the major part for me, really, in all of this, we know how they groomed, we know why they groomed, you know, and the major part of this for me is the failings, you know, serious failings by the police, by social services, and by teachers of all the people. I mean, down to the point where teachers knew it was going on in 2007.
wow.
Right? Because there was rumours that was going around a classroom about a certain girl. And again, it's involved in that where I said to you there was 8 in the class. Right, that was groomed. And then the extent of how they went about it, you know. But what's done it for me more than anything more is the police knew, right, in 2007 exactly what the hell was going on, because you can't argue with DNA. And I need to understand personally myself how the police could fail upon DNA evidence
100%, Steve.
from the authorities.
100%. You're 100% right. There was a third murder you wanted to talk about, and then there was another subject, and I think we'll talk about the third murder, wasn't there? There was 3 murders you wanted to talk about.
There was the one of the firebomb in the house.
Yes.
There was the one of the accident or incident involving the car where the girl got run over, and the third one I counted as murder, but it was suicide.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
And then
it was suicide, but in my personal eyes, you know, I can't accept the fact of suicide because she was pushed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Listen, guys, all the information can be found on the reports. But what's the thing to do with the sick you wanted to talk about?
See now, I've reached out to Mr. Singh, and he's opened my eyes to the other 50%. See, people seem to think that it's just white English girls, right, that this has been affected by. Now, I've had my eyes opened up again to the other 50% of this grooming phenomenon, to the Sikh girls that have been groomed by these Telford grooming gangs. So it's not only white British girls that they've gone after, it's also their own. You know, the young Sikh girls, which I can't see. This is where part 2 and 3 will come into it for me. When I've got more knowledge, you know, from somebody who's dealt with all of this from the Sikh community firsthand.
Well, then, Steve, what we could do is we could leave it at that. That's a very good baseline for everybody to understand. If you have any questions, as I say, leave them in the comments. Go over to Steve's channel, Official Topic Talk. I'll leave the link for that in the comment section of the video. Go over and subscribe and ring the bell and check out all his stuff. I mean, this is a polarizing subject. For me, there's right and there's wrongs. And what we've heard today is a lot of wrongs to do with, 1, the government, 2, people allowing this. There's clear corruption, there's blackmail, everything's involved in this. And unfortunately, again, we've been let down by our government. Steve, that's the end of this part 1, but I'm sure you're going to come back on for part 2 to explain the other.
Part 2, I'd like to cover the traumas and what these young children have gone through.
Yes, definitely. That needs to be covered.
To explain how these grooming gangs were able to groom like these children, where they groomed them, the pattern of events, exposing these young girls, and the extent of what they were doing to these young girls. I mean, it can all be found in the reports. I mean, but this is the second part of it.
Well, that's, as I say, that will be found in all the reports. But what Steve's going to do is he's going to come on and he's, kindly says that he's going to do a couple of parts to this here. But I think what we'll do is we'll wrap that up. Steve, thank you very much for coming on. You're an absolute gentleman. Go and subscribe to Steve's channel. That is the end of the podcast, guys. Steve, have a really good evening. Guys, have a good evening. Thank you very much for tuning in. Peace.
And take it easy.